Zoom. Mr. Kitson is somewhere around. Ms. Shippert,
Yes.
Ms. White, Mr. Wilson. Dee and Alice are both here. Approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Anybody got any
I'd make a motion, we approve them.
second? All those, oh, there's Mr. Kitson. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Visitors, we'll go around and get started here.
Thank you.
We'll dive right into the pipeline because that's who's here right now. Correct? That's correct. With Amoresco, they're the ones who are building the pipeline from the landfill to Dutch Road. Correct? That's correct. And I know everybody should have the ordinance in place. Did you get a copy of the ordinance that we're looking at proposing? You have you got my copy. I got an extra copy right here. And kind of want to fill us in on your project a little bit. I know we've had some discussion with some of your counterparts, and what we have here, we really just reiterated what AMA says that you have to do and complete. Pretty standard, but you guys knew you're going to have to do that. I'm sure Tom will want to look at it some more because and I think the one thing that I'd like to address is we talked about a potential of like a tipping fee or something like that, if that's a possibility, or we're looking at how we can permit this and so on and so forth. So I turn it over to you if you're okay with that. So.
Sure. Again, my name is Steve Hall with Amoresco. I'm a project manager for them, working on renewable natural gas projects like this one. Quick description of the project. We have numerous projects around the country, similar to this one that we have built and own and operate at various landfills. The project essentially takes the landfill gas, cleans it up, and then puts it into the pipeline, generally with a natural gas utility partner that distributes it on the line. So we're taking the gas from the landfill and removing all the constituents and basically making it natural gas quality gas before it goes into the pipeline. And, you know, that's required by the utility. They monitor that quality and we're held to particular standards for that. So as far as the project goes, you know, we're essentially looking to the county for right-of-way access predominantly. The discussion of the tipping fee has come up, and that is something we have not seen in any projects that we've developed so far. Mainly because most of the time we are just looking for a right-of-way access. We're not, unlike other types of renewable energy projects, some take up space on the land, make it unusable for a period of time, and therefore that would warrant some sort of fee or whatever. Again, we just look for a right-of-way. We're essentially doing the same thing that a natural gas company would do, or cable fiber company looking to put in a pipeline or cable in the ground along the right-of-way. So that's primarily what we're looking for. Again, as we build the pipelines, you know, we're always in compliance with whatever regulatory agency and specifications that the locality has or presents to us. And that's a quick overview. One of the questions I had is, in the last meeting, it was discussed that you guys had checked with your attorney and that right-of-way access was available. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. So was Charlie here, but my understanding is that the right-of-way is available to be developed in a project like this.
Excellent, thank you. We, at some point, we would also like to, if we could get some contact information to get, like a written validation of that, that would be helpful to us so that we can hopefully continue to proceed here.
Yep, and so part of the conversation is the right of way, I think would kind of fall under the road use and Mr. Anderson, Dave Anderson down there. And I know that's somebody that we need to loop in, correct, Alice? To have that, that'll all be within the ordinance. As you look at subsection H, it says road use agreement. I believe that we're gonna have something in there as regards to county and township roads as they cross underneath of them and just use them for. The weight of these are probably not that of a windmill moving across, but there's definitely some concerns and such. So would you guys all agree with that?
And Dave has all that from the women's stuff.
Mhm. Well, one question that I know Mr. Valley brought up, is it methane that's actually going in? They're not converting it over to a natural gas BTU with the methane source.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I think that was more for curiosity than anything, so.
I mean, we're basically removing nitrogen, CO2, and just leaving the methane as pure as possible.
Okay, cool. How large of a property is this on the actual site, the facility itself?
The site itself generally resides either on the landfill site or adjacent to. In this case, we're looking at on the landfill site itself. They vary in size based on the landfill capacity, but in general, it's an acre or two. It's just mainly pumps or compressors and vacuum pumps and assorted tanks that are used in the cleanup process that have some sort of reaction to eliminate some of the constituents we don't want. But
Steve, is there any hazard to that process? And what happens to what you're cleaning out? Nitrogen? Is that also available to be marketed, or is it?
now there's generally it's chemical reactions within vessels that interact and tie up the constituents that we don't want. They're not released. We don't capture them, or and there is no market for them as well. We basically clean them up and eliminate them. And the danger is no different than any other natural gas compressor station that you would find along a pipeline route. They would have compressor stations to boost the pressure up, like you would if you were pumping water along ways and you needed a certain amount of pressure up the end, you would have a series of pumps. So the danger is no greater than that. We obviously have to maintain pretty strict compliances. A lot of the landfills either flare the gas or sometimes burn it in internal combustion engines.
Thank you.
You said the components that you remove are not marketable. What happens to them? I mean,
They are chemically tied up and reacted, and we basically eliminate them through the equipment that we have on site. It's basically destroyed, for lack of better terms, through either combustion in a thermal oxidizer. When you run some of these constituents through temperatures in excess of, say, 1,000 degrees, they're virtually destroyed.
so is there anything released into the atmosphere?
We're required to have an air permit, just like any other process would, that we have to comply with, and we have that issued by the state of Illinois. In all respects, generally it's a better process than flaring. The potential to eliminate some of the odors that you may get through a conventional process tends to go away. So it should actually be an improvement over many of the existing situations that the landfills.
In here under road use agreement, section H, subsection B, we've removed some of the liability insurance and probably some of that has to be in there. I guess just to what level does it need to be? And we try to work with industry to make it feasible for you guys, or I see you've removed it. You want to address that, Alice, or?
Right, so the language was taken from the solar ordinance, so it's probably not going to apply, but we need to replace it with language that does apply. So I'm just letting you see what was used for like solar, and then we can go for there.
Would it be possible to get an electronic copy? I mean, it doesn't, it looks very typical and reasonable, but enough to just for us to be able to go through, and if we did have some comments that we could circle back around.
Yeah, absolutely. We can circle back to you. So I know that we're probably going to require some liability insurance, if you guys understand, just with everything that's happened and the distance you're going through our right of way, that we're going to require some. I'm going to default to you to some level of what's a reasonable number. Trying to work with industry to make it long-term sustainability for you and the county. The last question I have for you is decommissioning. And how does this get decommissioned?
Again, this industry is relatively new. I've not had to deal with that, but generally speaking, again, this is just a series of pumps. If the plant were to go away, the landfill would be responsible for handling the landfill gas that came off and going back to either a flaring process or some other new technology came about. But generally speaking, it would be removal of the pumps. It's not a large building. It's just a series of, like I said, pumps and compressors and tanks on a concrete pad approximately the size of a football field. Generally speaking, I would assume that we'd be responsible for the decommission and safe shutdown of the unit. So it could be through a sale, it could be whatever. But we build these with 20-year contracts in mind. So everyone.
What about the pipe that's in the ground? Did you guys end up having to dig all that up too, or is that?
I can't answer that myself right now, and I can get you an answer. I don't have a good answer for you on that right now.
If you could come back to me with an answer on that as far as decommissioning, I think that's something that I assume that this plant's going to be there for 100 years, and I'm not looking at it for any of our lifetimes. I'm looking at it for my kids and my great grandkids.
Sure.
So.
Yes. And possible, extensions off that are certainly doable.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Is there any renewable energy subsidies for this? Any advantages?
There are some credits that are available out there, which is what make these projects viable for the most part.
Wilson, you got anything? Just thinking.
How many years of gas do we have that can come out of the landfill? The way you guys are considering spending X amount of dollars on this project, what's the life expectancy of the methane coming out of the ground?
We do, as part of our due diligence in selecting projects, we look at the size of the landfill, the gas production, and based on those, we do, and the landfill does as well. They do forecasts on the gas production and the rates of production over an extended period of time, generally 20 to 25 years. So we look at projects that, are viable and consistent on those projections. Again, they are projections that could go much longer. could drop off sooner. And that's part of the risk from a business aspect that we have to take going into these projects. But generally, these larger landfills are very consistent. And again, we go through an analysis process to decide and determine which landfill sites that we would like to target for projects as well. And this certainly fits that bill.
So in the county, what do they have left as far as room to build more cells? I mean, how much longer can they be out there?
How much more?
How
can
much
they-
more property we've already said that they can develop in more landfill?
10 years ago, they told us they had 30 years at least, and they had slowed down. I don't know where we're at now, but they'd slowed down, expected at the rate they were at for 30 years.
More land, they put another.
Is that approved? Is that approved?
No.
Because of contract.
Mhm. Okay, Mhm.
Farm Bureau, do you have any questions? Or do you have anything over there that you guys are thinking of? I don't know, just step out too, so I'm putting you on the spot.
Football field of concrete.
Yeah,
So is this going in the middle of our?
no, it's going inside the landfill,
It's going inside.
landfill property, right?
So
Only the
that's
pipe,
your facilities.
correct.
I find it.
She was asking about how large the facility was and where it was actually going. That was on the landfill too. Nope.
So if the landfill for some reason has a dramatic decline, and then we've already had the dramatic decline, so I don't know how much more they can go, but would there be a point where this pipeline would not be viable based on the amount of gas produced?
Yes, the potential would exist for that to happen. Again, we try to evaluate these very carefully in selecting our projects. Considerable investment for our company, and obviously we want it to be successful as well. So we try to mitigate our risk as best we can by doing our initial due diligence, and but it's anyone's guess. I mean, at some point, the gas production in the landfill is still there, and that gas has to be either released by flaring or potentially electrical generation or through this process. And again, we base our selection on our research and people that have dealt with landfills for decades and give us these forecasts. So,
Any idea how much your cubic foot per day you're gonna be able to produce? Or I know that to the point that it's a 20-year expectancy, but you have a number that's in mind. So as we sit here and try to figure out permitting fees, I don't want you to go in the broke. But I know everything else that from a permit fee standpoint, we've done kilowatts when it's in regards to solar and wind. So, yeah, so we have to come up with a general number.
I can get back to you. We have multiple projects. And I want to make sure I have the proper number for this particular.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, if you can work with Alice and Dee on something that we can come up with from a permit fee standpoint, that's going to be realistic for you from a BTU. And we'll do the dance when it comes to negotiations on that, but at least we can have a place where we need to start.
And currently they're taking it out by truck. Is that correct? We
Currently,
do.
they're flaring it off at the landfill.
Burning it off.
Okay. 100%.
I'm not aware of anything else, but that would be the public's question.
They're generating electricity there themselves.
I think there is Again, that would be a question for Republic, but I think there is a generation site. We would have no involvement with that.
Right, right.
Alan, do you have any questions?
Nope, I'm good.
The year, Alice. So if you can come back with the things that I'm looking for, I think this committee would be liability insurance. Would you agree? We know that
Yes.
there has to be something there, and to what dollar amount is realistic. And a decommissioning plan idea. From our standpoint, we will come back with a road use agreement from Dave Anderson, at least something that you'll have to work with him on for the right of ways, crossing roads, so on and so forth. So I think,
How much?
oh yeah.
What kind of dollar amount is the plant you're putting in? What kind of figure are you guys looking at as far as the construction? What are you estimating it to be?
The range is probably 30 to 50 million.
And $1 million of that's the 7 miles it's gonna take. Million and a half of that'll be what it's gonna take to get the pipeline through the county. So you have $29 million at the landfill in building fee, building and what have you.
Approximately, yeah. Again, it varies on the size of the project itself and the capacity, but that's a rough range.
Does anybody else have questions? I know I've got a couple union guys, man.
No, that's my company. That's what we pay to build the facility. Yes, I'm from Amoresco, who is building the project and owning it as well. And again, from the county's perspective, we're just looking for right-of-way access for our pipeline from the facility to our interconnection point.
Oh, that's fair.
That's why mine's better off in the car.
We clean it up and we put it into the natural gas pipeline with the utility. So instead of burning it off on a flare at the landfill, we actually clean it up. It's called, at that point, it's called renewable natural gas. And it's put into the pipeline for the utility to distribute. So we can build it. The mandate comes from the fact that we have to meet the quality of the natural gas pipeline, is why we have to clean it up. And as a company, we do it as a renewable energy project that we kind of specialize in.
Okay, seeing no other questions, comments, Tom, you good? You got really aggressive there with your microphone,
No,
so I thought you had something.
We've got a lot of great contractors in this area too that we'd love to have the opportunities to put bids in with you guys, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that's.
We're all about our county, that's for sure.
Yeah, in general, we try to use, it's our advantage to use local contractors as much as possible. It's usually more cost effective. They know the area, they know the people. It makes life easier, plus it's the right thing to do.
Awesome. Yeah, if you can come back to us with that other information, we'll get you, you have Steve's email address that you can send him a digital copy, correct? And we'll send you the date and time for the next meeting for this, so that way we can all kind of reconvene. We really appreciate you coming in here today, and let's get this project moving. So one more question, will it eliminate some of the smell?
That's the intent. Usually, as part of our cleanup process, that is contained. So that's one of the typical benefits of doing this project over how it's currently. It won't get rid of the landfill smell, but any odor from the gas that currently is out there, the cleanup process will help eliminate that, and it should improve that.
But it'll, at least, it won't go up, it'll go backwards. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Any additional questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you inviting me.
Josh, you there?
I am. I hear you now.
Hey, how are you today?
Fantastic. And yourselves?
Oh, we're here. It's 52 degrees outside, so I could be picking corn, but whatever. Anyways, appreciate you joining us here today and kind of circling back on solar projects in commercial zone, or excuse me, in community solar and residential. I think that's where we want to
Yeah.
circle back to, and hopefully you got some information for us in regards to some of the questions we asked last time.
Yeah. So let me just jump right in. We talked about fencing, and we talked about what that looked like on both residential as well as, let's call it small scale commercial, right? Like something that might be used around a smaller farm or something like that. And so I did put together a few images. Let me just see if I can't throw those up on the screen for you here. Because I think that'll give you it's they're first off, I guess I want to clarify them. They're ones that we've had from quite a few years back, but I think they do a good job of just kind of showing what I'm after for you. So you should see on the screen some like a grain leg in the background and a few arrays there, right?
Give us 1 second. Jonathan's there you go.
Yep.
Miss Allen, can you see that as well?
Yes. Yep.
Perfect.
Outstanding. I love it when things work. So reason I picked this picture, obviously this is just kind of showing that, I would even put, it was even done in this situation. Now this is actually in DeKalb County is where this site is. But as you can see, there's no fencing or anything around it. And then I'm going to kind of advance through here and I'll point out the pieces. But I kind of wanted you to see, like, when we're talking ground mount, this is pretty much what we're talking about. Okay. Like from an elevation perspective, above, between ground and panel and full height. And, a person walking there, a 6 foot person's probably, their head's probably about where that line is between the two panels, vertically oriented or portrait oriented there. Okay. Just to kind of give some context around height. So I'm going to advance this here. So here's a smaller one that we did a long time ago. And you can see, again, same basic principle, right? Pile in the ground, rails running across it. And then all that wire management, you're going to see, you have to kind of look close, but it's in the middle section there. Okay. And then that's where I'm getting to. So this is how it was secured at that point in those areas and approved. This is like a chicken wire almost, but it's tighter. It's maybe 1/4 inch holes would probably be the best way to explain that. And then you can see that anchors were used to the rail to hold that in tight. And what that does is it prevents fingers and everything else from getting up in there and access to those wires. Okay. This is, again, back at that same grain leg we were looking at on the first one. This is before we finished rolling out the wire, but I wanted to show you how in this instance we ran the wire in and made a connection. So the wire the home runs, which are running back to the inverters. And again, I'm not going to go too deep into that, but the electrical service right off of the panels is coming through this flexi piece down into the conduit and then down through the ground. All right. So it's protected the whole way through. That wire would then lay basically right over top of where that entry point is. And that's a sealed point. It's a compression fitting basically. That would keep water and things like that. Plus it's sloped down, so you don't have to worry about it that way as well. And then here's again, we were still finishing up on the end here, but a zoomed out or a step back, just kind of showing what that looks like. So I'm sure there are other ways to do this, but what this allowed us to do, and the reason I wanted to bring it up and kind of show it to you guys, is this provides an option that's more reasonable, more economical, and a little bit easier to to accomplish when you're only talking about a few panels and you don't want to have to fence off the entire yard or just that section, right? Because you have to worry about shading and all sorts of other factors that come into that. So I just kind of wanted to put some sort of an example in front of you guys on how that's been approved before, just to kind of set that expectation or that thought process. Does that make sense?
Clear as mud.
Yeah.
I know I rolled through it quick. So let me ask this. Are there questions on how we did this or anything like that that I might be able to answer for you guys?
My question is, I think it looks great. What's the size? At what size does it now move into a fence rather than just this? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. There's a lot. So at some point, you're always going to have somebody complain, right? I'm sure you never hear that, but you know, at some point you're going to have a problem. I mean that the first one, and I'm going to run back to it here. This was, I think, 300 kW, if I remember right. So this was 3 big array. It was actually 2 sections in each row, and it was 3 rows of it. Okay. I would make the argument, I suppose, that that's probably about as big as you really want to get without having to worry about what are we doing to protect it. A little bit more than that. I'll be honest with you, the cost perspective is going to vary in there as well. I would say it's probably somewhere between there and half a megawatt. Which would be 500 kW. But that's just off the cuff, without running numbers on where it really makes it more economically feasible. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, at least gets us started in the right direction, right?
Mm-hmm. Also, with the bills that were just passed, you know, as far as labor requirements and things like that, I think that's going to change some of that too. Just on where we start, what size we start seeing these built on. I think it's probably going to go up a little bit, but that's just a guess. Questions on that piece specifically, or anything else on that one specifically? Otherwise, I'd like to kind of talk about a couple of things I noticed in the ordinance that you currently have.
Go ahead.
All right, let me just close that down here. Where's the button?
While you're looking at for that,
Yeah.
do you have any examples of ground mount residential? Or is residential always?
So this one right here is ground mount residential, right here.
Well,
So that one actually piped in and then ran across and into the house.
Okay.
I
guess I was thinking of more where there was not,
Subdivision kind of thing.
yeah, not an agricultural setup, more just a single standing house.
So ground mount resident, I do have one from Rockford area that I'd have to go digging for some photos. Most of the time when I'll be honest with you though, most of the time when you see ground mount, you're talking fairly good sized lots. So you don't normally see them jammed into a subdivision as often. You need to have a deeper lot, and it pretty much has to be, I mean, it's at most places you see it, they're going to say that it has to be in the backyard, right? Because they don't want to see it out in front.
Agreed.
And at that point, what you're really saying is, I mean, with a lot of places having 2-story homes, it's got to be a fairly deep lot. I don't know how else to say it. Probably at least half an acre or better.
Otherwise, you're just going to get too much shadow.
Exactly. And it just doesn't become cost effective. It's easier to just put it on the roof.
What's the rough cost? And I'm putting you on the spot. What's the cost difference between putting it on the roof compared to putting it on the ground? Like, is there significant cost savings to putting it on the ground?
Not particularly. I mean, I'd have to run the numbers. It is easier to put it on a roof because you don't deal with the trenching and stuff like that. You just run your conduit down through. Material wise, there's a little bit more cost on a ground mount. So it is a little bit cheaper to put it on a roof than it is to put it on the ground. Some people just don't want things on the roof. They don't want the penetrations through the shingles or I mean, most people don't have standing seam roofs, so that would be the exception to any sort of penetration.
So how much power would be generated by a single panel such as is pictured there?
These, I believe, were 325 watt panels, so 325 watts. They get bigger now. 340s, 350s are pretty common. They go up from there. We don't, I'll be honest, most of what we do anymore, this would be on this. I'm not even sure I could find these panels anymore. But like I said, this is like a 3-year-old photo. So.
Okay, thank you.
You were showing the 6 panel earlier and saying that went to a house. What would this single panel like this? Well, I understand your wattage. What would it actually power? If that makes a sensible question, I'm not sure.
Most of the systems are designed for, see, they're based on the utility bill. Usually they usually aren't designed to offset more power than the home can consume. Right. But it really just kind of depends on what's available spacing wise. I don't know how to phrase that in a great, I don't have a great answer for you. I can't say like that's the refrigerator. Unfortunately, I'll have to do some math.
Right. Okay, that's fine. That's kind of where I was at. I wasn't quite sure how to define it. So okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Let's see here. Right there.
Go ahead, Mr. Ballard.
Yes, question on, as these panels get older and stuff, I mean, we have old barns in the area, we have old silos that have been, can this thing produce a latent electricity, say that, once it's no longer hooked to the grid, or are they completely dead once they've been disconnected?
So DC power or solar panels would produce at the moment that they're grounded, right? So at the moment that you have a loop of power, they are able to produce electricity. That being said, when installed correctly, there's no bleed, if you will, through to existing buildings or anything along those lines.
My question is, 30 years in the future, somebody lets the place go derelict and stuff. Is there a electrical hazard sitting there producing electricity at times when, if it's not hooked to the grid or set up, they're not?
It shouldn't be. I'll be honest, most of the time they're going to be torn down. It protects, because the wires run underneath it. The UV is not an issue, and the wire's rated for UV as well. So it should not be a problem. I can't say that there's never going to be an issue, because I've just learned in this business, you never say never. But
what I'm saying, once, if the property basically goes vacant and stuff,
you shouldn't have an issue. No.
They're not producing power if somebody's out there,
as long as the switch is turned off, the generation is stopped.
They totally stop then. They don't
Yep.
use the latent power. That's what I'm.
Yep. Unless there's some sort of catastrophic event that would change that stance. As long as they're turned off, there's no generation that's moving forward.
I just wonder if they definitely need to be tore down if we went into problems. So.
Okay, so you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the other thing to remember is that inverters that are installed on the homes will not power up unless they get AC power. So if in your dialection, a dialect home perspective, I'm assuming power is probably going to get cut. It's pretty normal for a utility. That's actually going to stop the generation on that solar system anyway, because it doesn't receive the AC power to make its adjustments and then say, okay, I'm getting power, now I can send power.
Awesome. You said you had some concerns with our ordinance in regards to larger projects or community
solar projects specifically.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay.
So I wanted to start off by just going to section D, part C, power and communication lines.
Yep.
So it's basically stating that all wire needs to be run underground. So one of the newer ways to run electric through the system itself is what they call a cab system, which is they actually drive pile. There's a tension wire run across it, and then the wire is actually laid into these baskets. Now it's a fully grounded option, and it both decreases cost of installation as well as increases speed of installation. The wires are all UV rated. They're all, expected to be, they're all rated to be out in the sun, though generally some shade practices are used there.
You
I'm
called that a
afraid-
cap system?
CAB, CAB. Let me see if I can't just on the cuff
Okay,
here,
we're
grab a
good.
photo. But it is a fairly standard used option in the solar industry now. And I'm afraid that language is going to prevent that, which is probably going to deter some people.
That's
from a
easy
build
enough to
perspective.
change.
So I wanted to bring that one up specifically.
Okay.
Let me keep flipping here.
What's that?
Change the beauty of the solar panel if it's up in the air.
So I thought maybe that would be where we're going. So let me see if I can't get this picture up in front of us here. If I can. Actually, I'm just going to throw up a whole page here because I've got it in front of me. So right here is what I'm talking about. So it actually it's very common in what we call tracker systems, which are ones that are going to, the rows will be oriented in a north-south fashion, and then they actually rotate east and west. Okay. This then gets run at that rotation point in the middle, and then the wire gets run down through there. Like I said, it's fully grounded, communications run there, everything. Most often it's only run in the east-west direction. Though it can be run underneath the array as well. But it is lower than the panels, I guess is what I'm getting at.
And this would be for like a community solar, something that would
Correct.
consider, say, 5 to 50 acres.
Right. It's not going to be cost effective in a residential home at all. But when you're talking about economies of scale, it becomes a very viable option in a field. Plus it makes the service and maintenance of it a lot easier because it's just open and exposed. But this is an example where you're going to have fencing all the way around it, protecting the site anyway.
Correct.
So let's see here. So any other questions specifically?
Hearing none.
Love it. I was just kind of curious about, as we continue on then, I guess it would be 2J talking about glare.
Yep.
Obviously it makes a ton of sense around airports and things like that, as far as a study goes. Would the expectation be that a study be performed before a site starts or just in the event of a complaint? It sounds like a complaint, but I just want to be clear.
The larger projects have a glare study done as part of the application.
Okay. For when there's airports involved, it's totally normal, especially within a certain radius. I just was more curious on that one than anything else.
I think we're doing it to protect the residential as well, just for cost of doing business type of mentality.
Yep. And then I guess I also wanted to follow up then as we just kind of continue through, I got to see where I'm at. I guess it's page 11, number 13, interference.
Hold on, let me get there.
And this is just more from an understanding perspective, what the expectation is.
Yep, go ahead.
I have yet to find one that does this, but in the interest of making sure that it's tied off and everybody feels comfortable with it, like what would you be looking for to confirm that that's not the issue? Because I'm just saying, like, somebody's like, well, my TV signal isn't as good anymore. I think it's the solar field that went in. So the burden falls on the owner then to confirm that there's no broadcast that's causing an issue, or just showing that they're not sending anything out, or what's the thought behind, or the intent behind that?
This went back to when we developed our wind ordinance and it got carried over.
Okay.
We do require, trying to think of let me go get the name of the where we get the letter from for the wind company. So I'll be.
So
right
a lot of this was, we carried over, we had a wind ordinance in place, right? Solar came in, interference was something that was there. To your point, is it really gonna be a hindrance on antenna or whatever it may be? You've probably never seen it, but the reason for it being there is just for that simple fact that if you put something up and it goes up and all of a sudden the person next to it has difficulties watching television, listening to radio, whatever it may be, we shouldn't hinder their life because of.
Sure. I agree. My only intent in bringing it up is just to say, I think it makes sense to maybe to set some expectation there of this is our process for handling it, right? Because then it's just going to put both the consumer, the person trying to implement the project at ease of, okay, well, if this were to come up, here's what my expected costs are, or I can at least assemble what those are.
Well, and to the point, it says it less on a case by case basis. And I think that's kind of a CYA for us to say, okay,
Right.
how can we, not everything, it doesn't always fit the perfect mold. So this works as a different scenario.
Okay. I'll be honest with you. The rest of, go ahead. Yep.
Alice has got something in regards to that too.
So with the wind projects and now the solar projects, they do reach out to the United States Department of Commerce, National Telecommunications and Information Administration. As part of that study, the National Telecommunication and Information Administration sends out to the local broadcasting, interdepartment radio advisory committee. They give them 45 days to respond. If no one responds, then they send this letter confirming that there's no anticipated interference.
Okay. All right. Yeah. As long as there's kind of we've got the thought process behind it. That's all I really want to make sure is if somebody comes and asks the question, that it's tied off. And I'll be honest, other than that, I really didn't have much of an issue with it. I think and I'm assuming the engineering, the $100,000 reserve is just for an independent engineer to look over the documents. Is that what that's for there? Correct. I can find the section. I marked it. Consulting fund, page 9, part C.
Hold on, let me get there.
Correct. The Dave Anderson, the county engineer, had put that language in there just to assure that the funds are going to be there to do all the studies that he needs to do as part of preparing for the project.
Okay. That's that's one of those that I'm sure will garnish some attention, but I'm sure it can be talked through. So it's fine. Otherwise, honestly, I don't really have a problem with it. I think it's decent, or it's good verbiage. It sounds like there's a plan, like I said, with that cab exception that I could see being in somebody bringing up. I would make the comment though, I guess, just to our conversation before, that it probably does make sense to make it separate from a residential purpose. Your setbacks and stuff like that might be a little different too.
And that's my question. Do we need, so we've got a residential, we've got an SES. Do we need a community solar, or can the community solar work underneath this current ordinance without having to have 3 different ordinances?
Yeah.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Kind of what you're telling me is we can make this work from a community solar projects, especially if you get that cab.
I think you address the cab piece and then deal with the fencing as discussed on a residential versus commercial perspective. Yeah, I don't see any reason you can't make this work. And that might just be defining what you're considering to be a community solar versus a residential project, right?
Correct. But the state really already defined that for us, so.
Sure.
Why reinvent the wheel, right?
But no, I'm with you. I'm just saying, like, just basically calling attention to that specifically. Does that help? I hope.
Yes.
Love it. Fantastic.
Oh, just lots to think about.
Other questions that might have come up in the meantime since our last discussion that I might be able to address for you specifically?
Hearing none, you got anything back there? You good with it from a community solar standpoint? Okay, awesome. I greatly appreciate it. I think we've got some discussion to do around residential
Mhm.
and some community, but I think you've been very clear on, especially the fencing. That was a big concern for a lot of people here. So, but also
Yeah.
to your point, if it's the same price to put it on your roof, why not just put it there? But whatever.
Some people, like, again, some people just don't want it in the roof, and I get it. But it's going to be the right lot. It's going to be a special use kind of circumstance when they're going to do that.
Right.
Well, I tell you what then, with no other questions immediately, why don't we do this? I will bid you all adieu for today, and feel free to reach out and let me know if you have any other questions that come up, if you have anything else you want me to take a look at, or any other special use cases you'd want some feedback on. I am happy to be a resource however I can be.
Thank you very much, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem at all. You all have a wonderful rest of the day.
You also.
Bye.
Okay, so we do have a text amendment already going to planning, correct? Is that meeting already scheduled?
Yes.
Can we add, do we want to add the cab system? Either or since we've already sent it there, can we change it? And that's the guy, perfect timing, Charlie. So we've already sent a text amendment from this committee on the solar ordinance for SES to planning. We now have another addition that we'd like to add to it. I believe we want to at least discuss it. There's no reason to, if we can't send it, there's no reason to discuss it.
It hasn't gone to planning yet, right? It's going to the county board for the
Oh,
county
it's going
board.
to county board.
So
We made the recommendation to go to county board, then they have to send it to planning. Can we make a change on that? An additional change? Fantastic. So our discussion is not a mute point. We can actually have discussion and accomplish something, what I was looking at.
where did he say that language needs to be changed?
Yeah. So that was, you have it in front of you?
Yeah.
It's section D, page 2, section D, subsection C. Under power and communication lines. You're looking at me like you don't understand the CAP system.
No, I understand the cab system.
You just don't agree with it?
No, I don't.
How to-
It's going to be in a fenced-in area, correct?
Correct.
On a residential application?
No,
No,
this is commercial.
on the commercial application.
Yep.
I thought it was just for community, not commercial. That's where I had the
That's
question.
what he said.
Would be community, but community is not residential.
Okay.
Right,
So you
but SES is part of our big commercial ordinance, right?
And my thought process right now is if this is the only change to make community and SES work together, why have two different ordinances for a community solar and an SES solar when we know we have to have a separate ordinance for residential? So we can take these two, combine them together and call it an either or, because right now it says power and communication lines running between banks of solar panels shall be buried underground except from point of interconnection to existing utility owned above ground electrical wires. The zoning administrator, when or after granting a building permit, may grant variances when shallow bedrock, watercourse, or other elements of natural landscape interfere with the ability to bury lines.
Right, because they'll be daisy chained. And we're gonna put in 186,340,000 feet of this stuff. And it could be daisy chained, acres and acres and acres could be daisy chained together. Is that what you're saying?
With this system or with either system?
With the cab system?
Can't you daisy chain it with the underground system as
Sure,
well?
if it's underground and buried and out of sight, but if it's daisy chain and there's nothing required underneath, I'll just loop it from one bank into another bank and it's daisy chain.
Right.
Okay.
So do we not want to allow that?
I don't know. I'm asking how, I mean, is it gonna change the beauty of our 3,800 acres of glass in our county? I guess that's my question.
No, it's not.
Okay, well, I mean, it's already, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I just think that we need to look into it. I mean,
You guys have any? You've seen them on both large projects and small projects?
Every section, they come over and tie into one of those lines, and that's where all the lines play. As opposed to being underground.
The advantage is,
They're saving quicker and more economical for them, you know. You're not burying everything.
say that again?
Yeah, and again, very hard to fix a buried cable. I think you're into two sections here. Any homeowner or the residential or any of the farm, they set up on a subsidy where they can only make as much as they use.
Correct.
They they have a subsidy based on how much they'll use. They can offset their own bill. Where commercial is producing far more than they can use. And I think that would be a good dividing line to say one or the other.
Absolutely. Like we had, last time we had Kendall counties and they've got it on there where they can put in a project 120% larger than their required needs. So they can go a little bit bigger, but they can't. But to the point, there's no reason to, because anything that's produced above and beyond is sold back at wholesale cost. So it doesn't benefit you to put in a 500 megawatt in your house. So I think really that's where. So you think the cap system's just saving the company money and you don't think, you don't think it's gonna, it's just gonna,
above ground and save them installation.
and it's just gonna,
I'd love to go look at one.
okay.
I was sitting here earlier thinking I'd like to. Maybe go look at some.
I'd like to go up to Lanark and show you a 10 acre or 15 acre solar farm. Right along 20,
Right south of Freeport.
is it?
Yep.
You don't see it, or I'm sorry, south of Monroe.
Yeah.
You don't see it going in, but coming out, you see it on the east side of the road.
So if we don't wanna, we know we've got the industrial, that's the text amendment that we sent last time, which cleared the way for the Nelson facility to put in the hydrogen. So that makes sense. But if we don't want to send this, if we want to look at it, once again, to the point, ordinances have to be living, breathing documents. That if we want to look at it before we do anything, you can organize something as an activities director today.
I was driving my truck up.
Perfect.
So where's that by Leonard?
I saw the one in Monroe and I had friends with me, I thought, I'm gonna go back up.
I think,
I've looked at them in Minnesota for my daughter.
do you guys have any contacts that we could tap into to be able to get a couple private tours potentially?
I was
Behind,
gonna say Josh facilitated a tour when I brought a legislator over for the
That Josh?
Pawpaw project. And at this point, it should be live. So you should be able to actually get, I can't say for sure that they're live. It was expected to go live at the end of August, last I knew. When we visited, we just had to stay outside the fence because we couldn't go in until it was actually generating energy. But ironically enough, so we were able to stand outside the fence, but the panels are actually still really close. And Josh was able to facilitate that tour for us at the time. So honestly, you can look at the other ones, but Josh would have a connection for the next AMP project by Paw Paw.
Organize something where you can open it up to county board members on a couple days. Because I think there's a lot of county board members who want to look at some of these projects. So
Run into the
open meetings, right? But we can,
I mean, do it and buy a few projects,
we'll work on that. Charlie can help us with the Open Meetings Act and figuring out how we need to go about that. But if Josh can,
Post the meeting, we're gonna tour.
Gonna say, if you just say where you're going, it's not a big deal.
okay. Maybe we'll look at something like that. Perfect.
Post where we were going, we'll go over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let's just,
Josh wasn't originally going to be my contact on the tour base since he's been working with you, but I also have the contacts that I was working with originally to facilitate that. So if he can't, I have contact information for the other people that I was working with at the next AMP site.
perfect.
I just think that changing the ordinance to make it easier for more people that want to come to us and put more solar panel. I think we should dictate what we want. And if it's not advantageous for them to come here, then maybe they need to go to another county and look.
Let's get a tour planned. Let's work with Josh. Let's get it out for all county board members. We'll post it and go from there. If that.
Well, yeah, but I'm just, but we post it, we can go and look. Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I've got anything else in that. We can dive into residential. If you guys want to, a little bit. You saw it, I think fencing was a big concern, right? And after hearing about it, what's the committee's thoughts in regards to fencing?
My opinion is the fencing, who's gonna be the fencing police when it's not done? Who's gonna make sure when the weeds are growing around it and somebody's not, I mean, it's just a maintenance nightmare, I think. It's just impossible to police, I feel.
Especially in our
In
1,
residential.
2, 3,
Yeah.
solar, or even on a, and when we talk residential, we're also talking,
Small agriculture.
we're talking small agriculture, we're talking privately owned grain bin sites. You guys. I think a lot of what Kendall County, or we could take a lot of the base stuff here. We have certain setbacks that you have to be 65 feet off of a road, a township road or county road, like those are already built in. We have those numbers. You have to be so far away from your own residence, but we have a lot of zoning codes already. I think we can put something together, but I think fencing was really the big one that we had to address. And
Yeah, it was just a point of discussion.
Would you be looking to maintain an insurance requirement for residential, or is that for commercial only?
say that again.
On an ordinance, would you be requiring a liability insurance policy from the resident looking to install, or is that a commercial only requirement?
Charlie, you want to comment on that at all, or is there a reason for us to put a liability insurance on homeowners for solar panels, or?
I think their insurance carrier is probably going to require that anyway.
Tom's point, we don't have the people to police that. And if I come out to your farm and I trip over your disc, you have a liability already. So I mean, trip over the tongue of a hay rack.
I just know that
there's a lot more dangers on a farm than a solar panel.
I just know that the policy or the requirement at the commercial level was above and beyond probably what would be a standard insurance requirement for an individual probably to
As it
have.
should be.
Well, as
Yeah.
it should be, but I want to make sure that it doesn't potato
I
get
don't
carried
think we're gonna
over.
require you as a homeowner
And
to,
that's why you're here to ask those questions. We're glad you're here for that, so.
but let me see, what is kinder?
Are we gonna require a permitting fee for solar and a permitting fee for fencing if they're gonna put it in the county? If they're putting solar up
For
or a permit?
homeowners?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have that. Give me 1 second. I have a lot of papers. Oh,
We don't permit fencing.
no.
Do we? If I build a fence. along
Building
the road-
permit, building permits.
Farm fence, we charge a permit for it?
That's different.
Charge for everything. Oops.
Here, so Kendall County does require, I'm just using them because this is what was presented. They do require liability insurance up to $5 million.
Homeowner, the installer. services.
The applicant, owner, or operator shall maintain a current general liability policy covering bodily injury and property damage with limits of at least $3 million per occurrence and $5 million in the aggregate. Such insurance may be provided pursuant to a plan of self-insurance by a party with a net worth of $20 million or more. The county shall be named as an individual insured on the policy to the extent the county is entitled to.
I guess I would just say, I mean, I was able to check with one insurance company and you cannot purchase a $5 million liability policy direct. So it would have to go under an umbrella and I can't get a price on a general price on an umbrella because everything is piece by piece, but it gets.
That's more insurance than he carries, and he runs his own business, so probably more than Charlie carries. Charlie needs more insurance than that even. I think I got a hard time if Charlie's saying that we don't have to have something in there from a liability insurance standpoint.
I mean, I'm not saying that. You can put it in there. What I'm saying is I think the insurance carriers probably are going to have that a part of their homeowners insurance anyway.
You're not saying we have to put it in.
I'm not saying you have to put anything in.
And we can't police it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, how we can go around and check every year to do that?
You had a question from Burger permit fees. What was your question?
If somebody in the county is gonna get a solar panel installed, are they gonna get a building permit from our building department, our zoning department? And if we're gonna require fencing, are they gonna get a fencing permit as well?
So fencing fees right now are $50 and
She's saying yes.
yes, but I'll tell you what the permit is for residential. Here it is. $5 per kilowatt AC side.
Just wanna make sure it's if it's gonna be permitted or not.
Yep.
Just didn't know.
So do we want Allison D to start working on a residential without fencing? The basic generic setback requirements that our county requires already in place from roads and buildings and lot lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's our next step is to start putting it together and.
And then,
We won't have near the conversation we had over the industrial one, I'm sure. We need to start getting it put together.
but I think it's no different than having the ordinance for the private pipelines. Until we have something in front of us, we don't know.
Right.
We've got a basic understanding of what we need.
Because residentially, if somebody residentially is gonna put a system in, they're trying to save money and it's gonna be over X amount of years. It's gonna take them to pay back their investment, their solar, and you put a fence on top of it, it's probably another 2 or 3. I mean, so for a company to come in and put solar farms in of 3,800 acres, that's a different ballgame.
But to the point right now, if you want it as a residential, you have to adhere to this policy. And that's
That's what we're here to change.
That's what we're here to adjust. So We good there? Do you think we can start putting some stuff together from other counties, from other policies?
I think we need something and then we can look at it and
Yep.
pick it apart if there's something in there we don't like or something we feel we need to add. But we need a basic structure to start with.
Well, that's the nice thing. We got the pipeline thing.
Yeah.
Everybody can go home and read that and say, oh, we'll discuss it a little bit more. But it gives us at least the building blocks to start. Anybody else have, I'm not gonna dive into battery backup discussion, battery energy storage yet. I think we gotta get through these other two things before we go into battery energy storage. Would you guys agree with that? So let's focus on residential and
Yes.
pipeline. We do need to address it. It'll probably be within the next couple of meetings, but let's get these two topics that we've had great conversation about off the desk. And I know we also have in there two papers, renewable energy plan for Lee County. I think that's a great idea. I also think that could be an idea for planning as well, so they can build that. in.
As I said at the last meeting, I think that renewable energy plan for the county needs to be integrated with the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
You know, we can't just have one standalone. I mean, it's all gotta be,
Sort of work
Put together.
So
Nope, agreed.
you know, plan commission needs to work on that comp plan.
Yep. Any comments from anybody out there? On anything?
along this agenda.
You have something, come on. Well, can you tell me what it is about so I can be
No,
prepared?
I'm just gonna go back and I want to just poll and look at some of our previous comments that we had the last discussion. So I'm
Okay.
gonna kind of reference those and I'll probably bring them for the next meeting.
Perfect. We'll setting the next meeting.
Plan.
Miss Allen, you guys have the Monday, the 1st, correct? You guys
Yeah,
have
8
the
a.m.
8 a.m.
because it had to be changed from today.
You guys want to meet the same day? I know people who are on that committee, you lose on that extra per diem, and I know you're here for all those per diems, but
You know,
I know to
I-
your point, if you're traveling all the way over here,
Mhm.
would that help you out?
That was
Yeah,
the
I mean, I was
previous-
supposed to be there today. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it got canceled because we couldn't all, somebody had to be out. So
So your meeting's at 8 a.m.
8 a.m. the 1st.
for the UTV. Let's plan on the 1st. I'm gonna talk to Mr. Strugstead to see if we can switch it around. If we can, if we,
UTV meeting?
no, if they can go at 10 and we'll go at 8. Oh, it is? It's already posted? Yeah. We'll just go at 10 because that's inconvenient for my life. But that's,
Oh, come on.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
golly. It shouldn't be a 2-hour meeting. I'm sure we'll be an hour and a half like we have been right now, especially if we've got that. Let's do 10 a.m. on the November 1st. If that works for everybody.
What day? I don't have my phone, so I
It's
don't
a
have my
Monday.
calendar.
It's a Monday.
Okay,
It's a Monday,
should be good.
almost 2 weeks from today, almost.
Correct.
From
That
today.
gives everybody plenty of time. We've got county board coming up, so gives everybody time to get their stuff done. Anybody got anything else for the good of the group?
Meet on site somewhere?
Probably not yet. I want it to be open for the whole county. We'll see what they can.
Oh,
do. Well, before snow flies.
Well, hopefully that's the long one.
Hopefully that's a January.
Meet how to
Papa, whatever works for them, kind
open
of.
it during the day, after hours. It's gonna be open to the public. Do we need to do it after hours?
I think, well, if we're gonna post it, it needs to be, work with Josh, whatever works for him, and we'll make it work. At the end of the day, if it's a priority for you to get out there, you'll get out there. And if it's not a priority, then you won't get out there. So,
That system's a tracker. So if you want to see it at a high point, you might want to get there earlier or later in the day.
oh, okay.
Right? I mean, that would be the only other thing. Otherwise,
That one
they,
doesn't okay.
yep, otherwise they sit just flat. The rest of the time. they're not.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Thanks.